Good morning, Bucknutters. It is Tuesday, August 15th. I hope it is. That's great. The year is 2023. I'm confident in that. I'm also confident that we have a great show for you today. The dynamic duo of Mark Porter and Bill Kurelic will be here. But first, as you can see on the scroll, for those of you tuned in live, this show is sponsored by manscaped.com. The ultimate leader and the standard in male grooming products. We've told you here before, we are all clients. We are thrilled that they sent us an example of the product. My son, as I said, was saving up money for college to get all groomed up, and now he's all good. My wife sent me a picture from a store the other day. You can buy the whole Manscaped package for $100. That is an amazing deal. And if you add that into what we got on here, go to manscaped.com and use the code Bucknuts for 20% off and free shipping. We're essentially handing you a check for about $30 here. If you were going to buy Manscaped, it runs you about, $100 in the store, maybe $110 with shipping. Here you get it 20% off, no shipping. We're essentially, like I said, handing you $30 in cash right here. Not only infotainment on the Bucknuts Morning 5, $30 in cash basically handed to you, 20% off. Unlock your confidence and always use the right tools for the job with Manscaped. The scroll here today, if you're watching, will have the deal, so take advantage. Now let's bring in our guys. The great Bill Kurelic and the great Mark Porter are here. As you can see, they were here and ready to go. I was late. They're ready. This weekend is the first Friday in Ohio. We will light some candles. We will say some prayers, and we will enjoy the fact that every single weekend from here until further than I can comprehend will have some form of football in it. And given the way the MAC and the NFL have done it, we got football 4 or 5 days a week at times. All is good with the world. Gentlemen, things are good. Let's start, Bill, with, as we were just discussing, St. Louis wide receiver Jeremiah McClellan committed to Ohio State over the weekend. Now, his recruitment lasted for a while, Bill. I'm not sure it's a record for longest crystal ball rolled and being accurate from you, but it's close. One thing we do know for sure, every family in the country should get a copy of Jeremiah McClellan's commitment and use that as the template for how to make an announcement. Get on there, get tight, get your announcement, and get off. Every recruiting writer covering the event was thrilled with that, Bill. Tell us what we got. I heard some people say, oh, this guy's not as accelerator prospect as Mylan Graham or Jeremiah Smith. If you know anything about Jeremiah McClellan, this is not a naive family. They knew what they were getting themselves into. They know the opportunity that lies in front of them with an Ohio State wide receiver offer and commitment. Bill, what are they getting?
Well, first I have to go back. Maybe one of my longest lasting crystal ball picks that ended up being a one-time pick and picking Ohio State had to be Aaron Scott, actually. That one was really early. I might have almost picked him to Ohio State before Ohio State offered him a scholarship. Is Maurice Douglas, the coach there, told me this guy is a great one. And I went down and saw him play. He did not have an Ohio State offer at that time, but Maurice Douglas was exactly right. He said, this is my next great one, and he turned out to be a great one, ended up at Ohio State as a Buckeye commitment. So, but as far as Jeremiah McClellan, I guess basically I would start by saying he is really good. I mean, he's a top 100 overall prospect, and maybe he gets a little overshadowed because they had 2 5-star wide receivers in the class. But Jeremiah McClellan can absolutely play. And, like you said, Dan, that was to me, as I thought about how he did his commitment ceremony, it's kind of the template of how it should be done. His dad started it off, was all business. They talked a little bit about the family. It was just basically really well done. Not a lot of frivolous stuff. Here is what I'm thankful for. Here's why I'm making my pick, and boom, he makes the pick, and he's a Buckeye. And you and I both agreed. We separately talked, watched it and talked about it and everything, and just really well done. An excellent job by the McClellan family.
Yeah, like I said, you're going to hear stuff about him said a little differently just because he's not as highly rated as the other guys. And we've seen some of the back-end guys, the receivers not as highly rated, transfer out. Jeremiah McClellan is coming here to make an impact. Like I said, that family is not naive about football. Listen to his dad talk. And you can tell, and he said he thanked his dad for a lot of the coaching. His dad looks like he could probably give you a couple snaps at fullback right now. Mark, you did an evaluation a little while back because we've been on him for so long. What are your thoughts on the receiver as a player on the field?
Yeah, to make it easy for the Buckeyes fans, if you think about Curtis Samuel or Paris Campbell, that's pretty much what you're getting, is that slot type of receiver that's got a little running back to him when he gets the ball in his hands. He's slippery. He's got some punt return, kick return stuff to him. He's one of those guys you get the ball to in space, bubble screens, short passes, and let him do all the work. But he'll fit in nicely as another tool in the belt of the offensive coordinator. All these different weapons and ways to attack defense. He just brings another way of doing it. But he is very impressive on his high school tape. I can't wait to see how that translates to the college football field. But think Curtis Samuel, Paris Campbell.
It almost is like if you have Jeremiah Smith, Mylan Graham, and Jeremiah McClellan out there, they fit together beautifully. You've got the go-to number one, then you've got kind of the Mylan Graham's the slippery Garrett Wilson type, and then you've got the guy in the slot. So it makes sense to me when you're looking at this that Brian Hartline got the guys he wanted. Shocker. He did some great recruitment there. Go ahead.
And when you talk about building a wide receiver room, I've had college coaches say, there's these 5'9", 170-pound guys that fly, that are maybe the fastest guys in the country, but you don't build your whole room with them. You don't have 7'5'9" guys. And same with the 6'4" guy, 6'4", 220 pounds, 200 pounds. Boy, we love receivers like that, but you don't want to have 7 of them in your receiver room. So as you build a receiver room, you got to be very careful not to keep duplicating the same type too many times. So if you have a wide variety, you have all the different skill sets and all the different ways to attack defenses. So I think what you just said, it kind of popped in my mind. I've heard many coaches build their O-line room, build their running back room, build their receiver room, so it's a complete room.
And we have said this before, it's getting redundant and it's getting even more excellent. But years from now, when you're looking in the history books and reading about this time in recruiting, you're going to read about Brian Hartline and what he did at the wide receiver position. It is unprecedented, and it shows no signs of slowing down. Anyone who sees the light at the end of the tunnel for the other schools recruiting against Ohio State at wide receiver, that's a freight train called the Heartline Express, and it's coming right for you. All right, Bill, you did an article recently about the running back rotation and how they're going to reset that going forward on the recruiting trail. And we also talked a little bit before the show as finishing off the class, who they're still looking for on offense, pretty much done, and who they're looking for on defense. Quickly give us a review before we move on to some great questions from the fans.
Well, Ohio State, some people wondered when a year or so ago that they didn't sign a running back and wonder what is going on. Well, Tony Alford has come back and he said, here's exactly what's going on. He lands 3 running backs for 2024, including James People, basically a top 100 overall prospect. James Peoples from Texas. Jordan Lyle, who I think is really underrated. I mean, the kid is dynamic. He's a home run waiting to happen. Picked Ohio State over a list of offers that included Georgia, Florida State, the who's who. He had all the offers, and he picked Ohio State. Then you got Sam Williams-Dixon, kind of the multi-purpose running back. So he brought in those 3 guys. And then if you look ahead to 2025, Tony Alford's got Ohio State really well positioned for 2025. Obviously it helps that there's two Ohio running backs that he's already offered that are really good. Bo Jackson, has a tremendous potential. Just got to keep him on the field, not injured, and so on. He had a little injury problem a little bit his last season, his sophomore season, but he's a really talented kid. And Marquise Davis from Cleveland Heights, who originally was at Cleveland Glenville, another really talented kid. So he's offered those two kids, and they both are very high on Ohio State. They both like Ohio State a lot. Then you go out of state, and I in my article I mentioned, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 other out-of-state kids that Ohio State has a very realistic shot at landing. And one of them in particular I want to mention. Well, one of them is Jordan Davison from California, one of the top 2 or 3 running backs in the country. Visited Ohio State this summer, had a great time on his own dime, and has Ohio State very high on his list. But a guy that I think is not getting quite enough attention that really likes Ohio State a lot is Donovan Jackson from IMG. And he is a really talented kid. I think that not enough people are talking about Donovan as being a guy that likes Ohio State a lot and could end up at Ohio State.
It's an impressive setup there. Running back is an interesting spot. We talk. It's become like the national discussion in football, given the way the NFL has devalued running backs, etc. But if you want to know if running backs are devalued or not, watch the national semifinals. Ohio State was down to its 5th running back, and that confidence, that little twinkle in Ryan Day's eye when he talks about the running back room now, as opposed to last year, you can tell he feels very comfortable about that. Mark, hold on a second. Let's turn this back to your wheelhouse here. Tell me how you think Bo Jackson and Marquise Davis compare nationally. You've done reviews of Lyle and the other guys they have committed. Do you think these Ohioans fit on the national scale in terms of Ohio State's recruiting?
I definitely do. Bo Jackson is a big kid. Like, he's a physically imposing kid. That's why you hear about him on defense. He looks like a linebacker, or he's got that bigger build to him. So, running backs of that size aren't common, and he's a power runner, a speed runner, so he fits the bill. And Marquise Davis has the speed to run with anybody in the country. So, that's the number one quality of a running back, is if we block you a hole and it's open, can you kick it out the other side and run away from people? And that makes football really simple when you can do that, and he has that trait. So on a national level, those guys fit right in. I don't see every national running back, and I don't know the depth of every class, so I don't, talk nationally where guys fit in, but there's no doubt those guys are. And I could talk historically. When you go back in classes, how do they rate compared to other guys? Jordan Marshall, Samuel Williams-Dixon, and they're in the same ballpark. They're a little different. Like you said, we built a running back room, a lot of different shapes and sizes of running backs, bowling balls and long, lean guys and sprinters and jitterbugs and you name it. They're all in that running back room, and you kind of pick your poison from week to week. And we saw Ohio State run through all the poison last week and give everybody everything they have.
Dan, I got it real quick. I think when I was talking about the running backs, I think I might have said Donovan Jackson. It's Donovan Johnson, of course. And he is originally from Georgia. Was one of the top running backs in the country when he was in high school in Georgia. He's now at IMD, but he likes Ohio State a lot. It's Donovan Johnson at IMG now. And then I also should mention Byron Lewis from Florida. He was up here at Ohio State at camp this summer. He's coming back at some point, probably not in the too distant future. Byron Lewis likes Ohio State a lot as well.
They are in on some good dudes. And, running back recruiting is also one of those, let's see how it falls down at the very, very end. Lest we forget, Mayan Williams was going to be an Iowa State Cyclone, and probably 30 pounds heavier before he came to Ohio State.
We need to digress a little bit. When you're talking about running backs in the NFL and how they're devalued, they're not devalued in college. They're devalued in the NFL because they take such a beating after the first 3 or 4 years. The tread's off the tire. And that second contract you usually pay for a skeleton who can't run anymore. This hasn't happened to kids out of high school. They don't have too many carries yet. They're not too beat up. They still are special. We're not paying them anything. So, I agree. They are devalued in the NFL, and they have a problem there. But in college football, take all the Zekes and all the Saquons you want, because they're not going to hold out on you. They're just going to play. So as you said that, I'm like, yeah, that's true. And then I'm like, maybe not yet for us. So we get the good side of running back recruiting. We still get them before the NFL pounds them into submission.
You only have so many carries in your body. I'm telling you this, and I'll keep saying this as far as I go. Health. If we really got the real health reports in college and pro football, there wouldn't be as much need for the other content, because that really has so much to do with – I mean, if you told me right now, for a fact, Ohio State will not suffer an injury this year, I will guarantee they win the national championship. I'm serious about that.
And they really
now, Ohio State would not suffer one injury in this football season, I will guarantee you they win the national championship. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I always try to quantify this, and maybe it's for gambling and other things like injuries. When someone says they got a bad leg or a bad knee, but they're going to play, have you ever had a bad leg or a bad arm or a bad wrist and tried to golf, and how it takes away from your game? You're always wincing. You're always kind of favoring it. You're not the Superman that you are when you're fresh. I mean, I know what I'm like when I'm fresh and I feel great and everything's working and I got all the Tylenol and Advil in me and I can swing the club. And I know what it's like when I take that first swing of the day and I can't warm up. So when you have a team that's injured and beat up, yeah, all your stars are out there, but they're playing at 70%, 80%, and you tell yourself a lie. 80% of this guy is better than 100% of another guy. And I don't know how you quantify that still. I really don't, because injuries are something that will drag your team down. And like you said, the press will never know. The fans won't know. The name's on the back of the jersey, but that's not the name you're paying for.
It's so true. Like, if you ever talk to a coach a month after the season is over, they'll lay it out for you and tell you the truth. Well, we couldn't do this because, this guy was in the tub all week and our offense was based on getting it to him and blah, blah. That's just how it goes, man. For any level of athletics at any spot, I can tell you Denison's Division III basketball team is sometimes determined by one dude's ankle. So trust me, it's a big deal, and you think about it a lot. Now, speaking of other things we think about a lot, recruiting. Here they come, Bill, the questions. If you could let us know who these guys are, as Mika Hanna is a vet of recruiting and knows better than the rest. Mika Hanna asks, I heard we are in on Ernest Williams. Is that true? And do you think we offer Dominic Kirk's William?
Yeah, I did an item on Ernest Willer, I don't know, probably a week or so ago. And Ohio State is in contact with him. He is a defensive lineman. I think he's more of a defensive lineman, interior guy, but he could possibly play outside on the perimeter. But he's a defensive lineman, defensive tackle, defensive end. He was at IMG last year, but he is headed back. He is back in Maryland this year for his senior season. Ohio State has been in contact with him, and he told me about a week ago that he would likely make an official visit to Ohio State. So, yeah, he is on the board, on the radar screen as a possibility. As far as Dominique Kirk's, Mark can offer his opinion on this too, because he's very familiar with Dominique Kirk's. My gut feeling right now is that they don't offer him, but it wouldn't shock me. I saw Dominique play in person last season. Thought he did a nice job. I saw him play against Worcester. That was the night that Bo Jackson, their teammates at Cleveland St. Joe, Villa St. Joe. Bo Jackson, again, was battling the injuries a little bit and didn't play a tremendous amount, but Dominique Kirk's did that night and did a pretty good job. But again, I think that Ohio State will keep him on the radar screen, but I don't know that I'm sold that they're going to offer him a scholarship. We'll see how he does this season.
We will give this to Marcus Porter. Dante Scarfo asking an offensive line question. It immediately makes me think of Dante Scarnecchia. I don't know why. What would you say is harder for an offensive line to work through during this next season? Run blocking for a talented running back room, or pass blocking, by the way, for a talented receiver room? What do you think, Mark?
You know what? I've coached O-line, and I've played college football, and I've watched O-line develop. The run blocking sometimes comes more natural, coming off the ball and moving people off the ball. That kick stepping backwards and having your momentum going backwards with a true rusher. There's a lot of fat, slow defensive linemen that just kind of bump into you, and you just kind of bump bellies together and try to anchor them down. That's not pass rushing to me. That's, interior, push. Those tackles on the edge, that's where all the money's made. And if you ask me what the hardest skill is, or why are you drafting and taking guys like Devontae Armstrong and Deontay Armstrong, it's because you need elite feet on that edge. And it's very rare that people can do that. And if they do, they get paid $20 million a year to do it. So I think the pass blocking is the thing. I think the run blocking, what's nice is when you said we have some talented running backs, just get a body on a body. Just get your body on their body, and those running backs will make the cut, find the hole. Even if you push them to the wrong hole, I think we have guys that are that special that just give those guys a crack. So, yeah, a little long-winded there, but the run blocking usually comes first. The elite edge pass blocking is where where coaches pull their hair out.
Yeah, generally speaking, the big, strong, tough guys want to punch you in the face and go forward, not dance with another bear. So less skill involved. All right. The fist, 501st. I have a feeling I don't want to mess with those dudes. Let's go Buckeyes. Dan, will Ohio State's offense prioritize running the ball this season? That team up north came out saying they planned to beat the other team down by running the ball down their throat. What do you think? I do think they will emphasize their running game a little bit more this year for no other reason. They're going to be healthier at running back. If you guys remember last year, it wasn't just the semifinals. Every week we were checking the list to see who could play. Mayan was in 1 week, out the next. Trey was in 1 week and out the next. So I think you'll have a more complete room. Also, Evan Pryor will be around. We don't know what he's up to after the year he spent on the shelf last year with the knee injury. The question's the offensive line. Obviously, a new group on the outside and at center. I do think they'll run the ball more, and I think you could obviously see them run the ball, like Mark said, because it's harder a little bit more early on to kind of establish the group. Obviously, if you're coming to defend the Buckeyes, you're going to get a lot of safety help. So I imagine they will use that to their advantage. To me, running the ball is relatively simple. Can you get the safety out of the box or not? And if you can, you win. And if you can't, you don't. That's pretty much how it works. We overcomplicate the running the ball with schemes, and I get all that. But if they can't block with their five, they'll have some issues. Anyone want to comment on that? Mark, I see you trying to jump in there.
Yeah, we know last year that the running game kind of dwindled. As we ran out of running backs, we kind of went another way. So by default, it's going to be impossible to run the ball less. So you're going to see more running of the ball. And what you were talking about is what I want to say. With Marvin Harrison standing out there and Emeka and these other guys, you're not going to see 8 in the box. It's just not something the Ohio State offensive line has to do with. We're in 3 wide receiver sets. We're spreading you out. So if we can't block, it is truly a deficiency because we're trying to block a 7-man front, which is fair football. And a lot of times, Ohio State's pretty good about scheming and getting a +1. And if you know what that means, they just get an extra blocker over to the front side where they do have an extra blocker at the point of the attack, or they may be 1-man strong or a double team strong there. So their O-line has no excuses not to produce this year with the fresh running back room. And I know I'm being critical a little bit here, but yeah, I think after last year, we saw about as bad of a running game finishing up the year as you could, and it almost went exclusively passing game. But how do you, as you say running game, how do you go away from the receivers in the passing game? Jeez. It's truly what Ohio State should be. Balance. You do this, we do that. You do that, we do this, and you can't ever be right, and we always be right.
Makes it easier for a first-year starter at quarterback, certainly when you're making the one basic read. And I do think they'll run the ball much better this year. Just got to stay healthy at running back for sure. Travion Henderson is a thoroughbred, but guys who rely on their speed, got to have them healthy. Got to have their legs healthy. Jordan, cute picture there. Could you ask Dean and the Grand Poobah how many recruits they think Ohio State will finish with in the 2024 class? The Grand Poobah, of course, being Mark Porter, and Bill psyched because he named him and is trying to take credit for it long term. He's thinking about getting a tattoo. But this used to be the most popular question we would ever get on any recruiting situation. That has sort of dwindled over the past, 5 or 6 years, when that number has become, let's say, a moving target. But Bill, for the classic recruiting lovers, give us a number, and it usually tends to be in the 20 to 26 range.
Yeah, they got number 20 the other day with Jeremiah McClellan, so they're at 20 right now. At one point, if everything fell right, it looked like they might hit 25, 26 even, maybe even 27, if everything fell exactly right. Obviously, Dylan Stewart going to South Carolina, Kingston going to Notre Dame, that those ones didn't fall right for the Buckeyes. So, I think now we're looking at more along the lines of 23, 24, maybe 25 if everything falls right again from where they're at now. But I would say 23 or 24 right now.
Yeah. I almost, like Dan was saying, that 85 man scholarship limit, what's the big deal? Like, I wish I knew what the tuition was to Ohio State off the top of my head. I'm sure someone does. Room and board is X. Whatever that number is, I'm sure it's well known by every player in Ohio State. Just give me a check for that, and I have my scholarship. And I think the worrying about this 85-man count is just not something we worry about anymore because, we'll put you on scholarship. I mean, unless you're one of those guys that I need to say I'm on scholarship because I want to have some ego. But, hey, give me the whatever thousands a year it is, and I'll pay my own tuition, and we can call it even, and you can say whatever you want. So, I wouldn't get worried about scholarship count anymore, and especially not at places that have NIL funds where it's not a biggie.
Also, I might talking to Scott on Saturday. I posted a story on a player that's going to Ohio State in the 2024 class, and people don't necessarily think it's a big deal because it's a long snapper. But getting to Mark's point about scholarships, Morrow Evans is a 2024 player. He announced his commitment to Ohio State on Saturday. I had a story, I had quotes from his coach about him and all. Number one long snapper in the country. And again, people think, big deal, but it is a big deal if something goes wrong. If you don't get that snap back there quickly and on target and all, and you don't make that extra point or the game-winning field goal, it's a big deal. Or if you miss a punt, a fake punt call like happened to Ohio State, it's a big deal. So they got the number one long snapper in the country committed to the 2024 class, and it's not known exactly when he's going to go on scholarship. He is going to be a scholarship player at Ohio State eventually. It could be sooner, it could be later, it could be a gray shirt. Part of it will depend on when a scholarship is open and that type of thing. But you can do that too. You can kind of play around with things of when you put somebody on scholarship. And Morrow Evans will eventually be a scholarship player, just a matter of when.
At the risk of being Cliff Clavin and digressing, and a little known fact, I was a long snapper in college. And I played for a team that I think at the time had the most punts ever in an 11-game year because we were one of the worst teams in the country. I was also on the kickoff return team setting the wedge, and we got scored on more than anybody. So I did a lot of kickoff returning and snapping, and you said it, that snapping position, no one knows it. No one ever knows I did it, and probably until I just brought it up. But, boy, you have a bad snapper. You have a snapper that's not good. You'll know who he is. You'll curse his name to the day, he gets off the field. So I'm pro long snapper, and I can't believe that the number one long snapper in the country can sign, and it just goes under the radar at Ohio State. Like, no big deal. That is a very low-key, big-time sign. Something that sleep well at night because we don't worry about stupid field goal snaps or punt snaps. We just consider them automatic.
All right, here we go. And I know people know I talk about my son too much, but my son was the youth league quarterback coming up. And the reason we were competitive over other teams at Oakwood, I like to say the mean streets of Oakwood, because if you can make it here, you can make it not many other places. Our center was awesome. We ran the shotgun in 3rd grade and never dropped a snap. He is now the long snapper at Eastern Kentucky. He went there, battled his way. His name is Jonathan Duff. I was thinking about him yesterday. He went there and battled his ass off as a walk-on. Not a big dude. He's probably now just a 210 maybe. And now he is their long snapper. And like you said, if you want to know who the long snapper is, go Google the name Trey Junkin. Okay? Trey Junkin was one of the best long snappers in NFL history, was retired, came back for 1 game for the Giants and messed up the snap, or with the 49ers, and lost them the season.
I think it was the 49ers,
okay.
Yeah.
And it was that game where there was an interference in the end zone and Eli Manning was involved. But listen, it's a big deal. And also, I will say this, greatest nickname in sports, Ethan Albright was a redheaded dude on the Redskins for 11 years, and his nickname, the Red Snapper. Can't get better than that. All right, that is a major friggin' digression right there.
Boy, I'm sorry I brought that one on.
All right.
Long snappers everywhere are appreciating it. We deserve some love.
Okay, here we go. Yeah, we're getting some agreement here. Real hardcore football nerds like me. Yeah, brass taxes on it. I should not have brought up Oakwood because now all our fans, and I use that in quotes, people, are taking shots at me here. Okay. Let's get your thoughts on this. Ryan Day met with the media yesterday and did not name a starting quarterback. Dave and I discussed it. Dave thought there was a chance. And now you're starting to hear a little Devin Brown chatter. I don't know if that's accurate. Tends to be day by day. What do you guys think about this? Do you think it's an issue who he starts at quarterback? Kyle McCord or Devin Brown? What do you feel like? I mean, are we headed for a 2-quarterback system in which, if you have 2 quarterbacks, you have none? Bill, what do you think?
It's kind of interesting. I was talking to a person at Ohio State on Saturday, and they had their scrimmage Saturday and some other activities this weekend. And I brought up the possibility of Ohio State. Indiana, that's not a gimme. I certainly think Ohio State's going to win fairly handily, but it's not like they're playing Youngstown State the second game or the third game. They've got 2 or 3 games there where, realistically, there's no chance Ohio State's going to be defeated or even close. So depending on how things go on that first game, and I think the first game, the starting first snap is going to be Kyle McCord. But I said I wouldn't be shocked if they did something where a little bit like, dare I say it, Harbaugh did, is they test out the quarterbacks in those first few games and then decide who the guy is that they want. It ended up being J.J. McCarthy at Michigan. But I said I wouldn't be totally shocked if that happened, and the person agreed with me that I was talking to that was at Ohio State this weekend. So they wouldn't be surprised at all if that happened either. So, I don't rule that out. I just think Kyle McCord will take the first snap, and we'll see how it goes from there. And I think Devin Brown will also get his shot as well, because the games that they have at the beginning of the season, those guys can get their shots.
Mark, you get the last word.
Yeah, having not seen those guys, just common sense that it's either really good that it's tied or it's really bad that it's tied. Because if one of them had it, it'd be over and we'd know. So you either have 2 really good guys, okay, but I like what Bill's saying, and let's be honest, the first couple of games are scrimmages, and college football should have scrimmages. Every other level has some preseason or ways to test your guys out. You kind of test it against your own players. Yeah, why not use those first couple of games like Harbaugh's done and figure out who you have and know? What's the matter with knowing? What's the matter with getting the biggest sample size possible and saying, you know what, we've graded these guys for 2-3 games, all the practice, and here it is. And then you kind of walk forward in confidence, because if it is such a tight race, you know what's happening. One day it's this guy, one day it's this guy. One day the guy you love comes out and lays an egg, and then the one day the guy you think you don't like comes out and looks like Superman. And that must be what's happening. And then is it good or is it bad? We don't know. But Bill, I think, take those first couple of games and rotate these guys and let it come out in the wash.
If we are going to give out the benefit of the doubt on anything, I will give it to Ryan Day and the way he deals with quarterbacks. We don't know more than Ryan Day and Corey Dennis about quarterbacks. We don't see him every day. This is one of those times we just need to sit back and let Ryan Day do his gig, and they'll be fine in the end. I hope everyone enjoyed the show. Have a good one, Bucknutters.